Hey everybody, how's it going? I am Chris Flowers. I am the new executive producer of the My Biz Coaches show, and I want to introduce you to the man, the myth, the legend, the coach, CEO and founder of My Biz Coaches, Eric T. Whitmore. What's going on there, Coach?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Chris?
Doing pretty well, man. Gonna try to take up the slack for David, but like I said, hopefully we'll manage this pretty well here. So
I think we're gonna crush it.
I think we're gonna I think we are too. We're gonna have some fun doing it too. So
That's right.
We wanted to talk about today was the 5 guiding principles that we use over here at My Biz Coaches. So I wanted you to expound on that a little bit more and talk to us on what those 5 principles are and how they affect the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me preface this just a little bit with some of the things that we talk about with when we engage with clients. So first and foremost, there's 12 different key areas that we focus on within a business that we help them identify that there's gaps within the business, things like sales and marketing and leadership and a lot of these different categories that we go into. So when we do an assessment with a client, we'll help them identify where these opportunities are to improve. And then we walk through a process to help them create a solution for each of those areas. Now, the principles that we're going to reference today are the things that we use with that 12-step process. And actually, we have as many as 40 different categories that we can work within a business, right? So, but we really focus on the 12, and what we've identified, there's 6 core areas that we focus on within the business. And then we apply these principles to these areas within the business that we need to improve on, depending on whether somebody wants to grow, scale, or potentially even exit their business. We want to make sure you're maximizing the potential of the business. And that's really what we talk about with the principles is how do we optimize the business? That's the entire focus here.
Right. So we're going to talk about just to outline and how this is going to go down. First thing we're going to talk about is going to be the profit. Then we're going to look at percentages. Then we're going to look at what we call the 80-20 rule.
Correct.
And then we're going to save the best for last year because the 2 biggest factors is going to be the compounding and the marginal gains. So why don't we start off with obviously number 1, the profit, expound on that a little bit, and then we'll go down the line.
Absolutely. So with profit, and it's pretty straightforward. Let me say this. Many times people come to us and they want to fix something that they think is wrong in their business, right? It could be their lead process. It could be their marketing strategy. It could be their sales process. But at the end of the day, when it really comes down to is they're trying to enhance the profits that they get from their business, right? At the end of the day, if I want to bring X number of dollars in from my business, I have to have so much money coming in to be able to pay the expenses and net some kind of profit that I live off of.
Right.
And that's where most business owners really get caught up is many of them chase the revenue and not the profit. And the focus needs to be the profit. The principle is the profit. And so when we help companies identify, now remember, each business is different. So when we talk about profit, we often refer to it in a percentage. And so, for instance, if you had a business, Chris, and you're making $1 for every $1 that you bring in revenue, you're going to profit, let's say 20%. That's a good target number to focus on for a business. Bring in a 20%, you make a 20% profit margin, right? And so and knowing what that is for your business is absolutely imperative.
Critical.
That is where most business owners trip up. Okay. And so what we really help them identify is, okay, what's my profit percentage? What am I focused on? And there's multiple ways to improve that profit percentage. But one of the most imperative pieces to take away from that is expenses. What are you spending your money on to generate that revenue?
Okay.
Right. And so here's the key takeaway. When we assess somebody's revenue numbers and we look at their expenses, we identify what the profit is. What we look really closely at is what are you spending on, and is that dollar amount that you're spending, is it generating more clients? Is what I'm spending money on? Yes. Is what I'm spending money on bringing in more clients or retaining clients? If it's not doing one of those 2 things, it's not directly impacting my profits. And so then we have to assess, okay, is this a necessary expense? And then we either choose to opt out of it or maybe even reduce it, but we do different things. But that's how we can optimize the profits of a business. We have to identify what the net margins are First, you have to know where you are. And that's
Mhm.
actually a big problem too, because most business owners have profit margins.
Right. I think I got to say this is probably a pretty uncomfortable subject as well, because they get, especially if they've been up and running for a while, they get those little creature comforts like, oh yeah, I go, golfing every Friday or something like that. Or, okay, that's one of your expenditures, a great write off, but is it really landing you the dollars coming back in the door? You know
Right.
what I mean? So those are got to be some uncomfortable converstions that I know I've
Absolutely.
had with clients.
Absolutely. And that's honestly, again, I said it depends on where you're at in your business too, right? So
Mhm.
each business is different. Like I say 20% is a good margin. In your particular industry, it might be a leaner margin, it might be 10%, might be 15%. Yeah, maybe it's a little bit fatter and you're closer to 30%. But if 20% is a good target number, right? Then in anything that's less than 20%, what can we do to improve it? If it's better than 20%, how much better can we make it, right? But
Yeah.
now here's a caveat to this whole conversation, which is for every dollar if you know that you're going to make 20 cents on every dollar that you generate in revenue, for every dollar you save in expenses, it's 100% ROI,
Hmm.
right? So if I'm not spending $150 to go golfing on every Friday or every other Friday or whatever that looks like, it's $150 I'm putting back in my pocket. Now, that's kind of an extreme example, because that may be something maybe it is a client generation activity, maybe it's a client retention activity, maybe it's just me enjoying playing golf, right? But either way,
Right.
the point is that every dollar that the business saves, a great example that we share with people all the time, is how many recurring payments do you have on your credit card every month for services that you barely ever use?
Gotcha.
Right. And I've fallen trapped to this. How much work we've been doing with AI and different software
Yeah.
applications. I sign up for the free test for 30 days, and then 90 days later, I realize I've been billed 3 months in a row, and I haven't touched it since I started playing with it. Right.
Right.
So that's a perfect example of expenses that we just begin to incur, don't really think anything of it. And when you have decent margins and the business is making money, it's really easy to lose sight of those expenses and they
Lose
start
track.
creeping up. Yeah, we call it expense creep. And it
Mhm.
just starts creeping up and impacting your lifestyle. And so it's actually impacting your profit margins more than you think, because when you save a dollar, you actually put a dollar back in your pocket. Whereas if I make a dollar, I'm only putting 20 cents in my pocket.
Correct.
Make
It goes
sense?
back to Sun Tzu, The Art of War. One cart of your enemy supply is worth 20 of your own.
That's great example. Exactly. Absolutely. So that's profit in a nutshell. It just identifying one, first and foremost, what's your margin and how much of each dollar are you putting in your pocket? And then two, realize that expense dollar saved is expense dollar. It's a profit dollar put in your pocket.
Yeah, it's still a tough conversation to have with some people because they get really comfortable with that expenditures.
Exactly. Absolutely.
All right, so then let's talk about the percentages. Let's get into that, because that's another another glaring thing that'll show up real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's one of our 5 guiding principles, and here's what I've recognized. And I got this guidance from someone when I was much younger. I was in my 20s, and we had conversations. An older gentleman. He was educating me on things about investments and stuff like that. He was actually, we worked at a grocery store together. I was in a produce department at the grocery store. I was my high school job, right? Literally.
Mhm.
And he was an investor in stock in, oh shoot, I can't remember the name of the company. Oh, it was a home shopping network. And in 1987, there was a stock market crash in October. And I remember him complaining about because he invested in the home shopping network. And I think he bought it at $5 a share and it went down to like pennies. Like, it was like ridiculous. But the way he made his money, this guy was a retired military,
Mhm.
and he was on a pension. He was a medic in the military, and he had done his 20 plus, and he was retired collecting a pension. And what he did is he went and got a full-time job after he retired and took the extra money from his military retirement, and he used it to buy real estate.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, this is the mid 80s, and he was buying up real estate in certain areas, really good residential communities, and he was buying his investment property. So everything he taught me was about percentages. I would say, well, what's the actual dollar? He goes, that's not important. What you need to understand are the percentages. And he goes, percentages are more important than everything else. And the reason he liked talking to me, I was really good with math. And so I would pick up on his strategies and his concepts and a lot of his things that he learned that it was all about understanding the percentages. And he said, if you manage these correctly, you'll never lose. He says, but most people don't understand these numbers. And so, for instance, one of the very first examples he gave me was, did you? So if I have a percentage profit margin of say 20%, and I move from 20% to 30%, is that a 10% increase in profit? And me being a student in math, it's funny too, because there's about 6 of us that all worked in the same department, and we're all teenagers, we're all high school kids, except this one guy. And then our boss, right? All right. But this one guy, and Richard was his name, Richard. And Richard said, is it a 10% increase? And 4 out of the 5 of us are like, yeah, that's a 10% increase. And I'm like, no, that's a 50% increase, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's a 50% increase because that 10% divided into 20 is a 50% increase. Most people don't really embrace that understanding. So to go from 20% to 30% profit margin massive, right? Game changer. I mean, think about it. If you did $1 million a year and you took a 20% profit margin, you make 200,000. You go from 200,000 to 300,000. That's $100,000, right? That's more than most people make in an annual income. You can improve that much in your business if you know what you're doing correctly, right? So that's why this principle is so important as it relates to percentages. So understanding that a 10% increase from 20 to 30 is not a 10% increase, it's a 50% increase. So you take the number itself and divide it into the number you started with, and that shows you the percentage increase. And that was a significant understanding that I grasped, that it relates to real estate investing. It relates to business strategies. And for instance, if I borrow money, this is another place where people make a mistake. If I borrow money at, let's say, 15 cents on the dollar, well, 15%, sounds like a really high interest rate. But if I can put that money to work and make a 30% margin on it, I'm still doubling the cost of money. So that theoretically still makes sense. Now there's other variables you may want to consider, but the point is if you can understand that, that's called arbitrage. And if I can make money on borrowed money, that's a good business model to be in, because I typically don't have to come out of pocket for that money. I can borrow it for a percentage, as long as I know that I can double or do better than the return that I can get for what it costs me to borrow the money. That's when it makes sense. Now it also works for you in reverse, right? You need to make sure that you understand that too. But most people don't understand that concept of what a percentage improvement means and what that kind of impact that has in your business. And people look at, okay, so because 2%, or I'm sorry, a 10% increase on 20% would be 22%. Which is not marginally, that's not nearly the same.
That's not moving the needle that much.
Yeah, exactly. So this is more of an understanding, again, a guiding principle, help people understand that you need to understand what that looks like and why that's so important. Because if you didn't, again, if you borrowed money at 15%, you might, that's really expensive. Well, relative to what? I mean, if I can get a 40% return, 15% is nothing. I'd happily pay 15% to make 40%.
That deals a lot with like a lot of things that I deal with too. If people have an APR mindset rather than an ROI mindset.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So if I know I can flip that, like I said, if I'm going to make 30% on this contract, I got to borrow the money at 15. I'm still making 15% profit.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's where you get.
Yes. Go ahead. No, finish your thought. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, because that's where the mindset has to flip. Like I said, I mean, you have to be cognizant. Yeah. Okay. You got to make sure you can collect on this, but you make sure that you're going to get paid on it. But at the same time, you rather get 100% of nothing or 15%. You were going to make 30% margin, now you're making 15. Okay, that's still a good day to me. I'll take that all day long.
Well, and the best part about that is how many more times can I do that because I'm borrowing the money? Yeah, because at 15%, if I'm borrowing the money at 50%, I'll borrow as much as I can at 15% if I know I'm going to get 30 to 40% returns.
Absolutely.
Right. I'll take as much as you'll let me have. So again, right now, there's the follow-up to that is you need to be prudent. You need to make sure you're not borrowing money really, and you need to make sure that you know that you're going to be able to get this return. Here's a good example. I've had people borrow money to do ad spend. And we're not talking about somebody who's already done, a couple $100,000 in ad spend and knows that they're going to make a 3x ROI or ROAS, as we call it in marketing. They like, I always want to do pay-per-click. And so I want to go drop like 10 grand on ad spend.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. Whoa, hold your horses.
Whoa, cowboy. Hold on a second there.
Hold up here. Yeah, because you go drop 10 grand and you don't know that it works. That's right. And you're borrowing 15% on top of that. Right now, no, it doesn't make any sense at all. Mm-hmm. So again, when I talk about leveraging arbitrage and the percentages, you need to know, what you're getting yourself into and be certain that you have a certain amount of certainty that you're going to get that return. But if you're confident you can get that kind of return and you know what it is, then the arbitrage makes sense. But the general principle is understanding a percentage improvement, percentage increase in profits.
I think we could probably do a whole show just on that alone. That would be pretty. No, I'm serious. Like I said, I think it'd be a very educational thing. Like I said, that we can even have a conference on things like that. But I want to get to point number 3. I want to keep us moving down the road here. The 80-20 rule. Okay, so talk to us about the 80-20 rule that we apply. Yeah, so it's
called the 80-20 principle. And one of the things we talk about extensively, this is a universal law. This is not something that I just conjured up or whatever, but this is we've all heard of the concept of the 80-20 principle. It's actually called the Pareto principle. Pareto was an economist who came up with this concept and introduced this concept. He came out and introduced this concept. Basically says for everything that you do, you will see 80% of the results will come from 20% of your efforts. And it's a pretty standard principle across all applications. What you'll find is that if you break it down and you look at where all your results are coming from, the majority, 80% of all your results will come for only 20% of your efforts. So you could let's say you do 100 different things to generate a result. 80% of those results are going to come from just 20 of the 100 things that you do. And so the whole concept of this leveraging this principle, again, this is a guiding principle. So the whole concept is how do we narrow down to those 20 things? And now if the 80-20 principle continues to extend, which it does, then what we do is we recognize, okay, if these 20 things give us 80% of the results, how can we narrow those 20 things down to and go just down to those 20, that 20%, right? And so you keep narrowing it down. So you're only doing the things that are really giving you effective results.
So it keeps you from, like, if you're being, proactive and you're also being real with yourself, you understand, okay, I'm basically wasting time here. Yes. If I'm doing these other things, these 20%, these 20 things work. These 8 things, these 2 things work, these 8 things. So, okay, let's start cutting those out. Let's start focusing more on these. But again, that's another one of those hard conversations you got to have with yourself. Like, okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe, like I said, maybe the golfing thing's not, bringing us the return that we need. Although as much as I love golfing, maybe we need to cut that back to maybe twice a month instead of every week, but it's a hard conversation you got to have. But I think that's the thing in business, that you have to have these real looks. And that's why I said, I'm happy I have you, because you hold me accountable and things like that. So that's part of it, but it's a hard conversation to have. I understand people, if they're really taking their business serious, like, they got to have those hard conversations that they got to look in the mirror and say, okay, yeah, we need to trim this out.
Right, absolutely. So that's those are the first 3 guiding principles.
Right. And then I like how you put this here. Like, these are the next 2 are going to be like the big needle movers. These are the biggest factors we're going to definitely concentrate on. Talk to us about, the compounding principle.
Yeah. So, and many of you, everybody's going to have heard the example that I'm about to share, but you've heard the concept of, so first of all, Einstein said that compounding was the greatest, was the 8th wonder of the world. And those who understand it benefit from it, and those who don't pay it. And this is as it relates to pay for it, I should say. And this relates to, like, interest, for instance. Interest compounds on itself. it's compounded and calculated either on a daily or weekly or a monthly basis, right? And when you're compounding on a daily basis, this is the exercise or the example that many times people hear, double a penny a day for 31 days. Mm-hmm. And you double a penny a day. Okay, one day it's day one, it's a penny. Day two, it's 2 pennies. Day three, it's 4 pennies. Day four, it's 16 pennies, right? And you're like watching grass grow. I mean, I'm never going to get rich at this on this strategy or this process. But somewhere around day 20, you reach about 5,000 plus in revenue. And now all of a sudden that penny over the course of 20 days has now become $5,000. Well, okay, that's nice, right? But that's still not game changer. Now, day 24, just 4 days later, that 5,000 has become almost $41,000.
Wow. Yeah.
And now you're like, well, wait a minute. Okay. And so now, but if I came to you on day 24 and Chris, you didn't know any better. And I said, Chris, I'll tell you what, you got $41,000. Here's what I'll do, right? I'm going to go ahead and buy for $1 million. I'm going to buy your last 7 days. Would you do it?
Most people probably say yes.
Most people would likely say yes. And the truth of the matter is that on day 30, that $41,000 on 24, on day 30, that's now worth over $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And on day 31, it now becomes over $10 million.
Yeah.
So that's the concept of compounding. Now, certainly a certain percentage, that's a 50% a day for 30 days, right? So it's a 31 days, a unique example. But the idea is to illustrate how much that can happen over time. And really what we see is this hockey stick effect, right? For the longest time, it's just middle gains. It doesn't really even noticeable. It's negligible. But all of a sudden, over time, it starts compounding the growth over and over. And the percentages keep adding back in. And consequently, it just starts growing at a really rapid rate, which if you look at retirement strategies and things like that, you'll notice the first 10, 20 years, not a ton of growth. I mean, if you can continue to add, it'll grow. But the real growth comes in the last 10 to 20 years. You go from 20 to 30 and 30 to 40. It's like, boom, right?
Yeah.
Through the roof. So the whole idea is understand that as it relates to your business. Your business also compounds over time. If you have a system that works and consistently generates results, and you do that and get the results over and over and over, and you can continue to do it over an extended period of time, your business results compound. You get more efficient. You get better at what you do. This is assuming you're looking at this on a regular basis. You get more efficient with your marketing. You get better results from your sales process. You get better returns from your employees' investment into the business as far as their time and energy and efforts, right? The longer they do the job, the better they get at it. The longer you do the business, the better you get at making decisions. And consequently, over time, that's why if you know the percentages that, 25% of businesses fail in the first year, 50% the first 5, almost 75% fail in the first 10 years. The reverse almost exactly is true for the 25% that are still around in 10 years. They're crushing it after 10 years because they've perfected those systems and the compounding has worked in their advantage, and they didn't overextend themselves, and they did all the things they needed to do. And now they have multi-million-dollar businesses that are doing really well for themselves. And it doesn't necessarily need to pay, but 10 years is a really good number to target for a business to really see significant gains from. So that's, we really help people understand whether you're investing the money or you're borrowing money, which is the reverse of that. Then if you borrow, the interest compounds on you. So you need to know that if you're borrowing, like we talked about earlier, you need to make sure you're getting a return on investment. So if you borrow money just for the sake of borrowing money, that's not a good strategy.
No. But I really think it's important for people to understand too, like this compounding thing, as far as like you said, as far as like the activities that you're doing every single day. I don't think, I know, like I said, that's kind of I never really heard it quite in that term, where it's like, okay, now it's making me think. Now we're going back to the 80-20 rule, kind of in there, like, okay, what am I doing? And are like, these are things that are replicable, what I'm saying, make it part of the system, and that's to just make it more efficient and things like that. I mean, from an investing standpoint, I think, that's pretty, I wouldn't say it's common knowledge, but I mean, we're a little more familiar with it from because we have like 401ks and IRAs and SEPs and all that kind of stuff. But from the work component,
Yep.
I never would have really kind of gained that. I never would have thought of a compounding principle into working. That's a good concept for people to keep in mind. And lastly, we're going to go over the marginal gains.
Yeah. So marginal gains, and this is I'll mess up who the author was now, but he wrote about the concept of 1% improvement.
Oh, I know that book too. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Dang it. I can't remember. We'll probably add it in the notes after the fact. But the gentleman that wrote the book, he wrote a book, and it was based on the idea of a 1% improvement every day. And so so that's a combination of compounding and marginal gains. So marginal gains means that I don't need to make 1,000% return on some kind of investment, whether it's my business or an investment strategy or whatever the case may be. I don't need to make 1,000% improvement. Sometimes all I need is just a incremental improvement, but in multiple areas.
Mm-hmm.
So it's why it's marginal gains. If I do 1% a day for 365 days, it's 365%. That's the compounding of that. Correct. However, if I do marginal gains at 1% a day times 12 different business categories, it's 12% a day times 31 days. And you do the same math that we did on doubling the penny, but do it in 12 different categories. And right. 1% gain in 12 different categories is not unrealistic. A 25% improvement in any one category is a hell of a lot to ask for.
Right. That's a lot of work. That's a heavy lift.
Yeah. But if you just do a 1% improvement in 12 different areas, you've got half of that in one simple move, just moving 12 different areas. Now, if we also factor in the 80-20 principle, which is, thank you, incorporating the concept of the 80-20 principle, which means 80% of my efforts come from 20, or 80% of my results come from 20% of my efforts. And then I take the as you mentioned earlier, 2 of the 10 things that I know are giving me the best results. Mm-hmm. And then I compound on that and I do marginal gains, meaning every day I'm incrementally improving on how to get that better result. And I consistently do it because marginal gains is all about I only need a fraction of a percent in each of these different areas, but I keep adding to it every day. It grows at such an exponential rate. You can almost not calculate, can't even barely calculate it.
Yeah.
If you just 1% a day for 365 days is basically a 37% gain. 37% improvement, I should say. Now you do that over 2 years, it's 13,069% X. And over 3 years, it's a 50,000X.
Man.
So
that's huge from 1%. Just that one little.
Yeah. Yep. And the key is identifying, where are the areas where I'm going to get the biggest result? Can I make the impact that I want to make? And what's it going to take to get that compounding effect, right? And it's as simple as, let's say it's your marketing strategy and you're posting on social media. If you're posting every day for 365 days, there's no way you're not in a better place a year from now if you're familiar with if you're paying attention to what's working and what's not working. If you're constantly looking at your 80-20 principle and pulling out the stuff that doesn't work and continue to do the stuff that does work. If you keep doing that over every single day, you can't help but get better.
Yeah.
And so the concept is to really kind of look at that and say, okay, how do I continue to build off of that?
Just in case somebody's listening out there, the author of the book is the Sir David Brailsford, who wrote that book of the marginal gains theory. So
yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, he was knighted because of the work that he did as it relates to it was the English biking team for bikes, riding bikes. And they wanted, I don't know, bikes. That Shimano, I think, is one of the big brand names. They wanted them to sponsor it. And they basically laughed in his face and no, you guys are the worst in the world. We're not going to endorse you, right? We're not going to support you, sponsor you. We don't even want you riding our bikes, quite honestly.
Wow.
But what he did is he took 100 different areas of riding bike, doing the exercise. What he did is he took that and he broke that down in all the different things they could fix. And for instance, I remember very specifically putting the bike in the vehicle, using a black vehicle attracted dust. And that dust that was being attracted would get on the bike and get into the gears. And that would just have that small, simple little bit of, and not a lot, dust, not a big deal, but you accumulate that over time, over a course of 100 different things that impact it, right? And now all of a sudden, so all we had to do is get 1% better in 100 different areas, and you got this massive effect. And I can't remember the exact statistics or the data, but they went on to place in the Tour de France. Then they went on to win the Tour de France, which was in a course of 4 years. They turned the English team around to be one of the top biking teams in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's so marginal gains is that last piece, but it really kind of ties it all together. So when you understand the importance of profit and saving versus making, you understand your percentages and what's a percentage increase and how to identify what that is. Your 80-20 principle, the concept of compounding, and just doing simple marginal gains in certain areas where your business will make a big impact, and you combine that all together and you get massive returns from your business.
Yeah, I think that was a huge input. I think a lot of people going to get a lot out of this particular show. I know I already did. Just sitting here listening to you. now you got my gears turning like, wait a minute. Okay. What are some of the things that I'm doing here that I need to take a look at? All right, Coach, Absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to cover real quick just before we wrap it up?
No, I think we're good for the day. I want to go let this sit in with people, and we'll circle back next week, some other gems.
Yeah, it's gonna have to definitely marinate, because like I said, there's a lot here. There's a lot to take in. A lot of people are gonna be sitting like, damn it, I gotta quit doing this. You're gonna, but you know what? Hate me now, love me later. All right,
that's right.
Because when you're sitting on a bag later on, you'll be like, man, that Coach Eric, he knew what he was talking about.
Exactly.
It was a pain in the ass, but he knew what he was talking about. All right, Coach, you have a good one, man.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Chris.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.